Good evening, and welcome everyone to the Speedway Redevelopment Commission, our regular session. Today is Monday, October 22nd. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce everybody on the commission and staff. To my immediate right is Gordon Rundle, who is our vice president. Immediately to my left is Brody Duncan, commission member. Next to Brody is Rhonda Schwartz, the secretary of the commission, and then Dr. Terry Reed, who represents the Speedway School Corporation. And then on my far right is Mr. Tim Gropp. He is our economic development director for the town of Speedway. In our audience, we have Tim Ramian, and I do apologize for not introducing you at our last special meeting. And I know that you were in attendance and taking copious notes. So I've established that we do have a quorum, and proper notification of our meeting had been posted as required by law. The first item of business is to ask for anyone in the audience to provide any public comments if you'd like to do so. And if you would, please come to the lectern. We'd love to hear from anyone who's here. You know, I think we've got a 300% increase in our attendance compared to our last meeting, so that's positive, and I'm encouraged by that. So thank you for showing up. Since there's no public comment, let's move to the next item of business, which is the consent of our meeting minutes of our special session of October 8th, 2018. Those minutes had been distributed prior to our meeting. Any edits, comments had been provided to staff. So unless there's any further suggested edits or revisions, I will accept those minute meetings by consent. And thank you, everyone, for taking a look at those. The next item in our agenda, and in your packet, you will find our register of claims and expenses through October 19th, 2018. And if you'll take a moment to review those, and if we do have any questions, you know, I'm sure staff will be more than happy to respond to those. The only question I do have, and again, it's a notification that we have 2 IPL bills on our register this month. And Tim, would you give a little explanation?
Sure. We had kind of, as we sold property and knocked down buildings, we got rid of most of those. The last 2, one of them is obviously the town annex that our lease is with. The other one we discovered, we had thought that the Arts Council was paying all the utilities for the building on the 1300 block. It appears that we've actually been paying the IPL portion of those utilities.
Good.
So that will terminate.
Yeah. And just to remind everyone, the Art Center on Main Street will be vacating at the end of this calendar month. And we're certainly hopeful that they'll be able to find an alternate location because I know the town is, you know, very supportive of the arts here in our community. And I think it's been a great organization and a great initiative. So we'll help and support them in any possible way that we can. Any other questions on our register of claims and expenses?
There's one note I'll make. The Xerox art, we have gotten rid of that copier. We changed it out. The way it worked was a little different than we were anticipating, so our new firm bought out the contract, but instead of buying out Xerox, they sent us a check, so that contract's still running through. So that'll go away in November, but we did receive the money for those expenses.
Okay. So that'll just be a wash on those
Yeah,
costs. You can see that credit. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the register of claims that have been submitted to us. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the claims our expense claims as submitted.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments? Let's take it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, now we move on to our project updates. This is really the most exciting aspect of our meetings, showing that we've got a lot of progress here in our community. And I'd like to ask Mark Griffith, who is with the Veridus Group and who is inspecting the work for us, to give us a little update.
Well, good evening. Just wanted to give an update on the apartments over at the Wilshaw. CRG is making a ton of progress out there, especially on that north structure. We're seeing a lot of the masonry go on the exterior, seeing a lot of the siding going on, so really getting to see that finished product is getting really close. Those north units are wrapping up in their completion. We're seeing all the finishes go in. We're starting to see carpet go in on floors 2 and 3. So as they're finishing these units, they're getting the final paint in, and then they're working out into the corridors. So we're going to start seeing finishes in the corridors in the near future, and then also in the stairwells as well. So in the south structure, they've made up a ton of time. We're starting to see cabinets and countertops in that structure as well. So a lot of those finishes going in, starting to see those first passes at prime and paint and trim. So a lot of progress on site. They're also intending on finishing the parking lot yet this month. So we're hoping to see binder go down this week.
Good.
They were out into last week getting some sidewalks in on the east side of the structure. So a lot of progress over on that site. Masonry for the south structure is scheduled to start potentially next week. They've been trying to get another masonry crew out. It doesn't affect their critical path, but obviously there's some advantages to getting another crew out before the weather really starts to turn. So as far as the hotel, there was a kickoff meeting held on October 3rd where we got to meet a lot of the team, got to meet the members from Pepper Construction that will be out on site. The town of Speedway had a lot of opportunity to ask questions, make introductions to that team. So that was a pretty productive meeting. We should see GeoPeers hopefully starting next week, and also see Pepper begin to mobilize manpower as well. So fingers crossed on that. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah. Before they finish the parking lot, we had discussed, and SRC should know as well, pre-wiring some of the light poles to maybe allow us to add security cameras in the future. Did that go through? Have we heard back?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. We just wanted to be prepared that, having some of those light poles, the ability to add cameras and monitor
That's an
outside
excellent idea.
traffic.
Is that permanent security or just construction security?
Permanent security.
permanent.
So there's some that was already factored into the buildings. We wanted to make sure now, before that it's all torn up, it'll at least be wired to some of those exterior spots. So if we feel it needs to add cameras later, or it might be helpful on 16th Street or something, we're able to just tie into the system and add a camera here or there.
Mark, I was just curious. I've been through the north apartment building.
Mhm.
The finishes in the south building are going to be essentially the same: cabinetry,
Correct.
surfaces, flooring, et cetera. Okay,
Similar layouts to the units as well.
Good.
So
good. All right. Any word on the financing?
Yeah, so I have a call in from today. We do have, I had spoke with Dennis Otten, our bond attorney, prior to leaving on vacation. We're ready to go on our end. We're kind of just waiting for the thumbs up. So there's 3 public approvals we still need to get to the bond portion. The Town Hall Building Corp needs to approve the final parking lease. The Town Council needs to approve an amendment, and then the SRC will have to approve the final bond documents as well. So our intent, if they're as close as they say they are on the financing, would be to do the building corp and the town council approvals on the first meeting in November. I believe it's the 12th.
Okay.
And then our approval, we would just simply wait till our next meeting in November at that point. And then we would close right after that. So as soon as we get those final 3 documents, we get all the bond documents ready to sign and close it out. And as soon as they have their construction financing, they can move forward. They don't actually need to wait on the bond proceeds.
No, no,
So-
they just need the construction financing in place and then proceed with construction start. Good.
Correct.
Good. Anybody else have any questions for Mark?
Yeah, what month do you anticipate the first tenants moving into the apartments?
So when speaking with some members with Skinnell today, they're planning on having their leasing website for those units go live as early as next week. So they're
Oh, great.
finalizing those products and ready to push. I know that they've got a lot of interest in those units, and they are phasing their turnover, and I think they're trying to work out the details of how that will actually work, being able to turn over the north structure prior to the south structure. So I'm not exactly sure where they've landed with an early turnover for leasing those units. But with the progress that they've
Yeah, I know
made.
they've been,
By the-
promoting spring of next year.
Right, so the overall project,
See.
including the south structure, is scheduled to be complete in March.
And they have a landing spot for a website for the apartments. If you go to it now, it's just the
Under
site's
construction.
under construction. But as soon as that goes live, we'll make sure we push that out because we get a lot of questions on the leasing of the apartments, so.
Okay. Any more questions? Mark, thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
you giving us that update. It's very helpful. Well, let's move on to the update for 2500 North High School Road, and I will ask Mr. Gropp to give us that update.
Yeah. So we met on the 8th in special session to move forward on the economic development agreement. After that approval, we met, Tom and I met with their team to hash out some of the changes. Unfortunately, that meeting was the first time we saw the red line of the economic development agreement, so I think we've agreed on many of the factors that were still outstanding, minus a few. So as the four of us met, we redlined it and put some questions back to our attorney to review. We were able to touch base briefly last week, but it wasn't ideal with me being out of town. So we plan on meeting, unfortunately, Tom's now leaving.
I'll be out this following week.
So we plan on meeting with the attorneys and their side to hash out those final couple issues. I don't think they're that difficult. We're putting a lot of the financing aspects into a funding agreement that'll be signed off when the purchase agreement is all completed in the next 45 days. So with taking out those factors and getting more detail into that document, I think we're in a good spot to move forward. That being said, we'll add a new business tonight. We're going to have to amend the resolution that we passed on the 8th, allowing the vice president to sign in the absence of the president. So we will deal with that under new business. Everything else is moving along, though.
Yeah, any questions for Tim? Okay, great, thank you.
I do have a copy of the red line version if any of the SRC would like to take a look at it after the meeting.
Well, we have moving on to the next agenda item, no new resolutions, but that does bring us to our new business agenda items. And let's go ahead and address the amended resolution first, and then we'll discuss the contract with the Veridus Group.
So you should have before you Resolution 2018-07, an amended resolution authorizing the signature of the Economic Development Agreement for 2500. It's basically the exact same resolution. There's one new whereas, which reflects that we're amending it to allow the Vice President to sign in the absence of the President if needed, and then under therefore it adds the President or Vice President is authorized to sign. So, and the urgency to this is we need to get starting on some of the negotiations out of that site. There's some moving pieces, so we're trying to get this to conclusion, signed off so that they can go full force forward while we work on the additional documents, the purchase agreement, the funding document, the declaration and restrictions for that site. That'll give us a little bit of time to do that, but this authorizes them to kind of move forward and start working with some of the landowners and prospects.
This just gives us flexibility in Tom's absence, right?
Correct.
President's absence, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're making some very good progress. We just want to make sure that our council is very comfortable with that final version of any economic development agreement that we do execute. And thank you to Gordon for his willingness to sign that in my absence, should we get to that point where we can go ahead and finalize it. Certainly hope that we do.
I'll send you the current version tomorrow.
Any further questions on the amended resolution? Well, hearing none, I will accept a motion to accept Resolution 2018-07 of the Speedway Redevelopment Commission as amended.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-07, be the amended resolution approving the Economic Development Agreement 2500 project, allowing the Vice President or the President to execute.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further questions, discussion? Well, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the amended resolution 2018-07 as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, now, the next new business item that we have is the approval of a contract with the Veridus Group for Economic Development Strategic Planning, which is part of the Okra grant, and I'll ask Mr. Grob to give us, again, another update on the Okra grant that fortunately we've received, the town of Speedway has, and our goal to develop an effective economic development plan for our community. Tim?
Yeah, so OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs through the state of Indiana, administers all money from a program called, I just drew a blank, CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, which is a federal program. Part of that money is grants for planning, and we had applied earlier in the year for a planning grant to update our economic development strategic plan for the town of Speedway. Our last one was done quite a while ago, and it was definitely time to update the strategic plan. Unfortunately, at that time, we went through the whole process. We put out an RFP for proposals. We picked a contract. We did everything we were supposed to, and then they ran out of money. So you can all the technicalities, you can only apply for one grant at a time. So when we didn't get the planning grant, we went after a wastewater grant, and then we didn't get that. So we reapplied for the planning grant, and we received it. So the good news is all that work we did in the past was able to just move forward. We had received 2 applications to be the consultant for the economic development plan. We had interviewed them and selected Veridus Group as the group that we wanted to move forward with. So the consulting agreement, part of the OCRA process, now that we've received the approval letter, is to get the signed contracts back to them. So the agreement before you is the contract that was submitted for the grant portion. It follows the OCRA guidelines for the grant specifically, and so we need to get the signed. Now, the town actually is the group that received the grant. We will be paying for the matching portion of it, but so what we're actually doing is authorizing the town manager to move forward with signature of this consulting agreement. It'll be a joint effort with the town and the SRC as far as the steering committee. There'll be a lot of involvement from the town as well, residents, businesses, everybody steering the actual plan. This is just the first step, and it's part of the OCRA process. That being said, we do anticipate addendum coming back because we haven't fully set the scope of what we want. We have that meeting coming up this week, actually. So we anticipate the scope of the overall economic development plan to be a little larger than this plan. But for OCRA's purposes and the grant purposes, this is what they want to see for the grant and what their scope is. So it'll be everything in here. We just anticipate that we might want to get a little more into housing or some other specific areas that might be an add-on to what we have in here. So we didn't want to limit ourselves, but we also didn't want to go outside the scope of the grant qualification. So we anticipate coming back with an amendment, but for the grant purposes, this is the consulting agreement to move forward.
You know, it's also important to note that the selection of the Veridus Group was based on a formalized request for information that was administered probably a few months ago.
It's been quite a while now.
Right, and individuals within the town reviewed all the information that was submitted, and it was clear that Veridus was the most responsive to the solicitation that was administered. And also the Okra Grant Funds is going to be very helpful. It helps reduce our financial obligation, but it's an important project and an important process that, as Tim had mentioned, it's been quite a few years since we've had any form of a really strategic plan, you know, for the community. It probably goes back to the original redevelopment plan that was prepared back in 2006, 7, in that time frame. So timing is very good. So having said all that, does anybody have any questions for Tim regarding the proposed agreement from Veridus?
There is in your packet, you have a tentative timeline of the economic development plan. It's a pretty aggressive timeline, but we need to stay on it, so we plan on, again, setting the final scope and then starting kickoff in mid-November and doing some of the data collection early on. Usually, you'll do some of the public input prior, but we're going to do some of the data collection, and then starting in January, we'll start having public input sessions and participation.
Yeah, it's an exciting project. Really looking forward to being involved in that. Any additional questions? Any comments?
You said the timeline was aggressive. Is that based on the grant itself? Does it need to meet?
Yeah,
certain
we have to have certain approvals and sign-offs of drafts, so to be able to get those drafts done in time. Unfortunately, it actually landed right in May. Kind of said, passing something like that in May is not a great idea.
Well, there's
so-
24 hours in a day, Tim, you know, and the track isn't open 24 hours a day, so
Yep.
I think we'll be able to get it accomplished.
So we'll figure it out, and if we need to call a special meeting or something, we can do that. But we want to make sure it's a lot of data and a lot of input then to gather into a plan by that timeline, so.
And then we'll certainly revisit that once final scope is identified after the series of meetings with the Veridus representatives and town officials. So, since there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion to accept the proposed Veridus agreement, also allowing our town manager, Jacob Bladestill, to execute that document. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the contract with Veridus Group for economic development strategic plan and authorize the town manager to sign.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. You're not going to repeat the motion? Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion on the table, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, let's move on to, there's no further new business. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, our old business, and that is the 1300 block request for proposal responses, timeline, and next steps. I believe that deadline has occurred on the submittal of any proposals based on our solicitation. And Tim?
Yeah, so the deadline was October 15th, which was last Monday. We received no responses to the request for proposals. So officially, we'll just document in the minutes that we received no proposals. At this point, then there's a 30-day waiting period, and then after that, we're free to negotiate or enter into contracts as we seem most appropriate for that block.
Okay. And again, I do want to mention that the vacancy of the Arts Center was in anticipation of the development of that 1300 block. So another exciting project. So looking forward to that as well. So we'll wait out the 30-day period and then move on to the next steps.
Yep.
So any questions about the RFP, 1300 block? Okay. Great. I do want to give a little update on the RPM property acquisition that we had discussed in our previous meetings. And also motions have been granted to allow the president to extend an offer to purchase subject property. We have heard from property owner. We're currently in negotiations. Hope to resolve those relatively soon. And unfortunately, I cannot divulge any further information other than we're making progress. So that's all I have. I guess we're moving to the director's report.
All right.
So, Tim, what have you got?
A few things. Again, going back to 1300 block, everything seems to be on schedule there. We still plan on demolition in November, followed immediately by remediation. We'll be communicating with the downtown business owners that currently park in that lot. The area that's actually being excavated and taken out for the demo goes almost all the way to the Bell Racing Helmets area. So it'll take a portion of our current parking lot there, as well as behind the building and a little bit underneath the building as well. Former building at that point. So it's much larger area than I was anticipating when we sat down, but they hope to, there's some new regulations in place too, so it could drag on for a little bit. Now they have to take it out and then test it and then take it, I don't know.
The IDEM.
IDEM has changed some of the rules based on how they're interpreting some of the national laws. So the environmental consultant, Wilcox, who's not our consultant on that one, actually, it's the insurance consultant for the previous owner, is working through all that to figure it out. In the interim, we'll do our best to accommodate additional parking in that area. In meeting in November, we're hoping, there's a new state law that came out this year that requires all redevelopment commissions to have a meeting with any overlapping taxing units that wish to join us at that meeting. So we're going to try and target to have that at our November meeting. We don't really, I don't think we need to call a special meeting for it. Most of the information that's required based on that law, we've already put out when we did our annual report back in, was that April?
It was April.
March or April.
Right.
So we'll basically update that, give a little bit more information, and check that requirement off, hopefully in November. We'll try to get those notices out if that works out. I actually have a meeting with London Witty on Wednesday to kind of go through the requirements and see what steps need to be taken, but it was a little questionable if you needed to do that in 18 or if it started in 19, and the consensus around the state's basically been, just go ahead and do it. I have no problem
And if
with
we have to do it again in 19, we'll do it again.
We'll have to do it again in 19 as
Sure.
well. So it's just in the realm of being full disclosure and everything.
Right.
So we'll go over our bonds, our uses for TIF dollars, project, we'll be able to talk to them about our plans up at 2,500 and 1,300 block, things like that. So just want to let you know, we'll probably be noticing that. So you be ready, Tom. You might have more people in the audience next month, so.
Well, I'm not sure I can handle any more. I mean, this is just an overwhelming turnout this evening. I'm just really pleased. As I said, I think we're about 300% greater in attendance than we have been in the past, so. And I know I make fun of that, but I sincerely appreciate those that do come to our meetings. I think it's important to, see government in action, whether it's your council or whether it's one of the boards or commissions. It's really encouraging to see people take interest in their town and their community. So with that said, I'll ask if there's any further report.
I just wanted to mention, this is a private event, but it's a first-year event. Scott Jasek and his team over at the Delara factory, he's actually Indy Racing Experience, is putting on a Halloween event. It does cost money, but it's called the Spirits of Maine. Earlier, he said he wanted to do something for Halloween, and nobody really owns Halloween, as he put it, so he wants Speedway to own Halloween, and he really wants to change Main Street and the area into like a destination for Halloween. So he went out and found sponsors and did it, and so we're anxious to see how it turns out, and I hope it goes really well for him. But it's Saturday, October 27th. The event starts at 8 p.m. You can get tickets at Eventbrite or at the Delara IndyCar Factory. Just wanted to
Okay.
mention that.
Oh, that's
Again,
good.
it's not
That's
a
good.
town event or anything, but it's something new that a local business is trying to do, and it'd be nice to see it be successful and grow from there.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to be out of town for that event. It sounds like it'd be fun. Now, I do know that the Lions Club has got a Halloween event
Yes.
and function.
The Lions Club is sponsoring a Halloween contest this Wednesday at the junior high, 6:30 to 9:30. Sixth grade and under, there's a Halloween contest. There'll be candy. They will be supplying cider and, I believe, Long's Donuts. So it's a fun event. It's free, so bring your kids and come out to that. Friday is the Zombie Run. That starts down on Main Street on the B&O Trail, followed by the Crowloween on Main Street. And then the Chamber is sponsoring the Trunk or Treat over at the American Legion Saturday from 5:30 to 6:45. So there'll be lots of candy.
A lot of activities.
Over there as
I
well.
think Speedway does own
Yeah.
Halloween, don't
It's
we?
looking good.
Yeah, great. Tim, did you have anything else?
I do not at this time.
Okay.
What was the cost of the Delara?
I'll look afterwards. I think I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
too much.
Whatever it is, it might be
email
too
on it.
much.
I'll have to check for you.
Just one more thing. Do we have update on Gilman Street, where the progress is on that?
Yeah, so last week we received a revised version. So we were working on a memorandum of understanding to do the cleanup in that area, and we were close enough, we decided to go ahead and change that into the actual agreement, so we don't have to come back. So we received the first version from their attorneys last week. We need to hop on a call this week and review it and see what our concerns are, or how close we are. And we hope to have that done by your next meeting.
Okay.
So,
So it'd be nice to be able to close on that transaction,
correct.
see this funding.
And just so everybody knows what we're talking about, so that corner of 10th and Poco, adjacent to the lime pile, it's a lot of brush and it's really horrible looking. We own a little bit of property in there, and then Prax Air owns the majority, and it has some contamination in it that needs to be closed. So we've been working with IDEM and Prax Air to come up with a joint agreement to get that done. We'll elaborate on that when the agreement actually comes up to the SRC.
Any further questions for Tim? Good. Anybody on the commission have any announcements or statements that you'd like to make? No? I do want to mention, I've become an avid fan of the B&O Trail, and take my daily walks there. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's a tremendous enhancement to our community. And I know Beverly Catter-Henry is here, and really, if it were for you, Beverly, I'm not sure that it would have occurred. And, you know, again, I appreciate all of your efforts, and I'm glad to be able to benefit from that. Hopefully, it'll extend my life a little bit. I might be able to attend more meetings. So thank you very much. I do want to say, please support your Speedway businesses, industries, food and beverage. It's an important part of our community. And I can't see any reason why you would want to leave Speedway with everything that we now have to offer. So, that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'll make the motion that we adjourn.
Good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Anybody object? Adjourn.